Good morning students. Today we will look into another type of population interaction, which is competition. Okay, what is competition? Competition generally occurs when closely related species compete for the same resources that are limiting. When two different species compete for one particular resource which are limited in number, that particular type of population interaction is known as competition. Okay, yesterday itself we have discussed the competition could be of two types. It could be either interspecific or intraspecific. Intraspecific means if the competition is existing between same species, then it can be represented as interspecific competition. If two lions are competing for one deer, then it is interspecific competition because both the lions, they belong to the species Panthera leo. When they both fight for one particular deer, it becomes interspecific competition. There is one more type of competition known as intraspecific competition, where the competition exists between two different species, a tiger and lion fighting for one particular deer. Okay, we have also seen that there is one more type of competition where two completely different species fight for one particular resource. We have studied the example of American lake visiting flamingos and resident fishes who will fight for the common food, which is zooplanktons. Okay. Secondly, if we have to talk about competition, resources need not be limiting for competition to occur. That means competition will not occur only when the resources are limited in number. Even when the resources are more in number, still the competition can happen. Okay, example is when goats were introduced in Galapagos Island, the native abundant tortoise in that Galapagos Island, which lived for several years in the same island, when new goats were introduced in that particular island, this particular species of abundant tortoise became extinct. Why it became extinct is because of the more browsing and the grazing ability of the goats. Goats will graze the leaves as well as the grass more, whereas the abundant tortoise capacity to graze the grass was up to a limitation. So the species became extinct. The species became extinct. Okay, so that's the speciality of competition. We will study more details about competition. Okay, we have certain principles which need to be studied under competition. First, we will look into this concept known as competitive release. Okay, I'll read the statement, then I'll explain it to you in a simple way. A species whose distribution is restricted to a small geographical area because of the presence of a competitively superior species is found to expand its distributional range dramatically when the competing superior species is experimentally removed. Now, let us take an example of two different types of squirrels. Okay, squirrels, they belong to one particular species. There are two different types of squirrels. One is red squirrel, the other one is grey squirrel. Okay, imagine the red squirrel is more dominant. Here we have mentioned superior species. Red squirrels are superior species, whereas grey squirrels are little weak species. Okay, the red squirrels are superior species, whereas the grey squirrels are little weaker type of squirrels. Okay, they both fight for the same resource, which is hazelnut. Okay, they eat hazelnut, they feed on hazelnut. Now, till the red squirrels are present in that particular habitat, the grey squirrels will remain weak. Okay, and they will remain in a particular geographical area and they will never try to expand their territory or expand their habitat. Okay, that is because it is scared of the superior species, which is a red squirrel. Okay, however, if we experimentally remove, okay, imagine if these red squirrels are removed from that particular habitat, then the grey squirrels will start expanding their distributional area. They will start spreading throughout the through a large geographical area. Till the red squirrels are present, the grey color squirrels, they will be little recessive kind, or they will be weaker, and they will be restricted to a small geographical area. Okay, whereas if you remove these red squirrels from that particular habitat, the grey squirrels will start expanding their geographical area. They will start occupying that a larger geographical area. Okay, so this is known as competitive release. When two species are fighting for one particular resource, whereas one species is little dominant and the other species is little weaker, on a weaker side. If you remove the dominant or the superior species, let's consider one species as superior, another species as inferior. Okay, if you when these superior and inferior species are present in a geographical area, they both are fighting for one particular resource. If you remove the superior species, then the inferior species will start spreading across a larger geographical area. Okay, so this is known as competitive release. If one superior species are removed, it will help the inferior species or weaker species to extend their geographical area. Okay, so let's read it again. A species, here grey color squirrels, whose distribution is restricted to a small geographical area because of the presence of a competitively superior species, is found to expand its distributional range dramatically when the competing superior species is experimentally removed. When two species are fighting for one resource, amongst these two, one is superior, other one is little inferior. If you remove the superior species, and this inferior species will be restricted to a small geographical area because of the presence of this superior species, whereas this inferior species will expand its distributional range if you remove the superior species from that particular geographical area. Okay, so let's look into the next type of next concept, which is Connell's elegant field experiment. Okay, this person called as Connell, he did a field experiment. Okay, and he supported this statement, competitive release. Okay, what did he experiment? What was his experiment? He showed that superior barnacle, Balanus, dominates the intertidal area and excludes the smaller barnacle, Thamalis, from that particular zone. Okay, what did he say? What did he say? See, these two organisms are known as barnacles. Okay, you might have seen these organisms in the ocean shore. Okay, generally these are known as barnacles. Okay, in the shore of a sea, you might have seen this type of organisms. It will be present attached to the, it will be seen growing on rocks. Okay, this way. Now, they are known as barnacles. Okay, barnacles are generally arthropods. Okay, basically they are arthropods. They are the like both the picture it represents barnacles. Now this is a superior barnacle. The name of this barnacle is known as Balanus. Okay, this is a superior. Both are barnacles. Okay, both belong to one particular genus. They both are barnacles, whereas this is a kind of superior barnacle. This is a kind of inferior barnacles, or a smaller, we can say. Okay, the name of this barnacle is Balanus, whereas this barnacle is Thamalis. Okay, hope you are able to understand. We are talking about two closely related species here, out of which one will be superior, other one will be little weaker side. Okay, so this is the superior one, this is a weaker one, because they are smaller in size when compared to this particular barnacle. This is known as Balanus, this is known as Thamalis. in the ocean or in the sea, where they live in the intertidal area. Intertidal area means the area between two tides. Okay, in the ocean, tides are very common. So in between two tides, that region is known as intertidal area. In that particular intertidal area, usually this barnacle lives. When this barnacle lives in the intertidal area, it does not allow this thamalis to live in that particular area. Okay, it has completely removed. So we'll read it again. He did this field experiment. This person called as Connell. He did the field experiment, that he went to this intertidal area and he studied the life of these barnacles. Okay, so that's known as field experiment. When you go to a field and conduct experiment, that is known as field experiment. He showed that superior barnacle balanus. This is superior barnacle. The name of the superior barnacle is balanus. They dominate the intertidal area and exclude, they completely remove the smaller barnacle thamalis. This is the smaller barnacles named as thamalis from that particular zone. When the superior barnacles balanus live in the intertidal area, they do not allow the smaller barnacle thamalis to stay in that particular zone. It will completely exclude that organism. So that is known as, that was proved in his elegant field experiment. Okay, it was conducted by this person known as Connell. So that indicates. Okay, we will look into this particular principle, then we will get to know. So next principle that we will be studying is Gauss's competitive exclusion principle. Okay, Gauss's competitive exclusion principle. Now, when two closely related species competing for the same resource cannot coexist indefinitely, and the competitively inferior will be eliminated eventually. Actually, a kind of, if you look into the statement, this Connell's field experiment support this particular principle. Okay, Connell's field experiment support this competitive exclusion principle. Now, what this statement says, Gauss's competitive exclusion principle, this was the principle proposed by this person known as Gauss. Okay, what he said is, when two closely related species are competing for one particular resource, how long will they coexist? Okay, how long they will live together? Okay, they can't live together for a very long time. Eventually the organism or the species which is on little weaker side, they will be removed so that this superior species can live and survive. Okay, so that is known as competitive exclusion principle. If you read the statement clearly, then we can make out that Connell's elegant field experiment supports the statement where it says, when two closely related species competing for the same resource cannot coexist indefinitely, they cannot live together for a very, very longer time, and the competitively inferior will be eliminated eventually. Eventually, the organisms which are little inferior, they will be eliminated. Here in case of Connell's field experiment we have studied, there were two types of barnacles. This was the superior one and this was a little smaller one. The smaller one was completely removed from by the superior barnacles. Okay, so imagine these two organisms are closely related species because both of them are barnacles. Imagine they were competing for the same resource. Okay, they were competing for the same resource. They will not coexist continuously for a longer time. They cannot live together. Eventually, out of these two, the organisms which are inferior or little on a weaker side, they will be removed. Whereas only the superior species will stay back, they will live and they will survive. Okay, so this is competitive exclusion principle, and this Connell's field experiment support this statement. Okay, by mistake I told you that this was supported by Connell's elegant field experiment, but Connell's elegant field experiment support this statement. Okay. So let's move on to the next topic, which is resource partitioning. Okay, resource partitioning means it is a very simple concept. There is some resource and there are many species, there are different species fighting for one particular resource. Then what the other organism, all the species have to do, they have to share this resource among themselves. Okay, so that is resource partitioning. You have to partition the resources, you have to distribute or divide the resource among yourselves. If two species compete for the same resource, they could avoid competition by choosing, for instance, different times for feeding or different foraging pattern. Okay, if two species are fighting for one particular resource, if they are willing to share that particular resource, then what they have to do is they have to choose different times for feeding. Okay, they have to choose different time, they have to change the time they are coming for grazing or they are coming for browsing in that particular area. Okay, imagine if there are a few deer and there are few giraffes feeding on one particular resource or one particular group of plants. Then if they both come together, deers and giraffes, they come together, then there will be a fight as on who will take the resource, who will eat the resource. Whereas they will plan so that the deer will come and eat in the morning and the giraffes will come in and eat in the evening. That is choosing different times for feeding so that there is no fighting between them, or different foraging pattern. Foraging pattern means the type of food they eat, or the type of food they collect, they have to change the type of that particular thing. Okay, by doing it, either you have to change your feeding pattern or you have to change the time of your feeding. By doing this, the resource can be utilized successfully by two different species so that there is no competition happening among these two different species. Okay, I hope this is clear to you. These are the different concepts. In order to support this resource partitioning, this MacArthur, okay, this ecologist known as MacArthur, he showed 5 closely related species of warblers living on the same tree were able to avoid competition and coexist due to behavioral differences in their foraging activities. Okay, if you look into this, all these birds, they are warblers, but different species of warblers. Okay, they are beautiful, beautifully colored birds. Okay, they are known as warblers. Okay, these are the birds. Generally, they are known as warblers. Okay, you see these 5 different types of warblers. All 5 of them are different species of warblers. Okay, there are different species of warblers. If you take any animal, there will be different species of that particular animal. If you take tiger, there are different types of tiger. If you take lion, there are different types of lions. If you take elephant, there are different types of elephants. So in this bird known as warbler also, there are different species. There are 5 different species. Okay, this is what told by this MacArthur, person called as MacArthur. He said 5 closely related species of warblers. They are 5 closely related species of this bird known as warbler. They are living on the same tree. Okay, see, they are living on the same tree. Were able to avoid competition. Even though 5 different species of a bird were living on the same tree, they were able to avoid competition. They never compete with each other. Okay, imagine this is a tree. Okay, this represents a single tree actually. Okay, so these are the 5 different types of warblers. Even though they were living on a single tree, they never competed with each other. Why? Because they coexisted. Okay, they did not compete. However, they stayed together. Okay, even though they were belonging to one particular species, they remained together. They did not compete with each other. They remained in a single tree due to behavioral differences in their foraging activities. Okay, due to they had made changes in their eating pattern. If you look into this particular picture, then if you see this tree, okay, here it is marked in green, whereas if you see this yellow color part of the tree, this is the place where this particular warbler, it's a black warbler, they try to live and eat their food from. Okay, this particular warbler, even though this is a big tree, this particular warbler, they choose only this yellow color part of the tree. Okay, it's not a yellow color part of the tree. We have indicated it in yellow so that we can make out which was the place this warbler has selected to eat their food from. Okay, so this warbler was living in this particular part of the tree and eating their food only from this particular part of the tree. They never interfered with the food of other 4 species of warblers. If you look into this particular warbler, it is a black-throated green warbler. Okay, it is a green color warbler. This particular warbler, if you see, they selected only this particular part of the tree for their food. Okay, and if you look into this particular, this is known as May warbler. This particular warbler, they selected only the tip of the plant or tree for their food. Okay, if you look into this, bay-breasted warbler, then they selected only this particular part of the tree for their food. And if you look into this yellow-rumped warbler, they selected only the bottom part of the tree for their food. Okay, even though these 5 different species of warbler were living together, they did not fight with each other. They stayed together and they coexisted. Coexistence means when 2 species go hand in hand without fighting with each other. Okay, that is known as coexisting. If coexisting does not happen, the competition will lead to adverse effects. Okay, so this is how they selected different part of the trees for their food. Okay, that is the reason they did not fight and they coexisted, because we know when there is competition, both the species are harmed. Okay, in this case, warblers were not harmed because of their behavioral changes. Okay, so this is the speciality of competition. So you know what is competitive release. When 2 species are living together and they are fighting for the same resource, if you remove the superior species, the inferior species or the weaker species will start expanding their distributional range. They will start spreading their habitat, okay, and their number will also increase. That is known as competitive release. And Gauss's competitive exclusion principle, it says that when 2 species, related species, are fighting for the same resource, then if they both cannot coexist for a longer time, eventually the weaker species or the inferior species will be removed and the superior species will continue. Okay, in order to support this, Connell's elegant field experiment was done, okay, where we have taken the example of barnacles. Then resource partitioning. Resource partitioning means when 2 species are fighting for the same resource, then they have to share the resources. Either they have to choose a different feeding time or they have to choose a different foraging pattern. Okay, the example is resource partitioning in warblers. Okay, so that's all about competition. Let's move on to the next type of population interaction, which is Parasitism. Okay, so parasitism is a type of interaction where there is a parasite and there is a host. Okay, there is a parasite and there is a host. Okay, where in case of predation there was a predator and a prey. In case of parasite we will always have a parasite, okay, and there is a host receiving this parasite. It is an interaction between two species where one species, which is a parasite, depends on other species host for food and shelter, and in this process host is harmed. I have given the explanation of Ascaris lumbricoides, which is a parasite, and human is the host for Ascaris lumbricoides. Ascaris lumbricoid enters the human host and it will stay in the intestine of human being, and they will take nutrition from the human being, and they will find shelter also in the human body, human intestine. Okay, and ultimately it will cause disease in the human body. Okay, so this is known as parasitism. Parasitic mode of life ensures free lodging and meals. Okay, parasitism means parasite is getting free lodging. Lodging means place to stay, and meals. Meals means the nutrition. So when Ascaris lumbricoides enters human body, it is getting both place to live, that is free lodging, and meals, that is nutrition from the human body. Some parasites are host specific in such a way that both host and parasite tend to co-evolve. Okay, so if you see this, there are certain parasites which are host specific. That means if one particular parasite will attack only one particular host, it will not attack any particular host. Okay, so one parasite, for example, will one parasite will attack only one particular host. There is a parasite host relationship. That particular parasite, if one parasite is attacking this Ascaris lumbricoides, it will be present in the intestine of human beings, because this parasite has human beings as their host. If this parasite is put in the body of a monkey, it may not live in the intestine of the monkey, because this parasite's host is human. Okay, it cannot live in any other host apart from human. Okay, now when this parasite and host bonding is so much that in the evolution process also they co-evolve. Okay, when the human beings are evolving, the Ascaris lumbricoides also will evolve along with human beings. It doesn't have any life apart. If the human body is is left. Okay, if it does not have a host body as human, then it cannot survive. Okay, so they both co-evolve. That's a kind of simple example we can consider. Now, in order to attack a host or in any particular species, the parasites will have certain adaptation. Any parasite will have certain adaptation. What are the adaptations? Loss of unnecessary sense organs. Anyways, parasites are going to live inside the body of a host. So, they do not develop much advanced sense organs. Okay? They don't develop any kind of much advanced unnecessary sense organs are not developed in this particular parasite. Now, presence of adhesive organs or suckers to cling onto the host. Okay, they will have certain part in their body or the organ in their body which are known as suckers. Okay, or adhesive organs. Generally, adhesive organs. Adhesive organs are the organs. If you look at the mouth of the leech, okay, it has a part known as sucker. With the help of that sucker, they will cling on to the host body so that it does not fall out. Okay, with the help of that, it will attach to the host body surface. Okay, that part is known as sucker. Okay, generally these parasites will have adhesive organs or suckers to cling on to the host. That means to attach to the host and hold it tightly. They loss of digestive system. Okay, they don't have well-defined digestive system because they take the nutrition directly from the host so they don't have their own digestive system. High reproductive capacity. Okay, high reproductive capacity. Once a virus or a bacteria enters our body, the number if one virus has entered our body, within a span of few hours, the number of virus will be multiplied to a greater extent. Okay, so the reproductive capacity is high. Liver fluke has two intermediate hosts, snail and a fish, to complete its life cycle. Okay, liver fluke, you have studied in your first year class. This is a worm that actually infects the liver of any particular organism. Generally, this particular parasite has two hosts. Like Plasmodium has two hosts. One is Anopheles mosquito and human body. This liver fluke has it is a platyhelminthes. Sorry, liver fluke is a platyhelminthes. Okay, this particular liver fluke has two intermediate hosts, which is one is snail and a fish. Okay, only if they have snail and fish, it will complete its life cycle. Liver fluke also has its host as human beings. It can also survive in the liver of human beings. Generally, it attacks the liver of any particular organism. Okay. So it says it may not have only one host. There is possibility that it may have two hosts as well. Now, what are the effects the parasites will be having on the host? Okay, parasites always harms the host. Okay, so we know what is the interaction when in the parasitism. One organism is benefited, species A is benefited, which is parasite. Species B, which is a host, is always harmed. They reduce the survival, growth and reproduction of the host. Okay, when it harms the host, it will reduce the survival, it will reduce the growth and also reproduction of the host. Reduce its population density. The parasite will always reduce the population density of the host. We are not only talking about the parasites which will attack the human beings. We are talking about parasites in general. Okay, so parasites, it will reduce the host population density. They make the host more vulnerable to the predators by making it physically weak. Okay, when the parasite attacks the host, it makes the host physically weak, so that the host is more and more prone to attacks by the predators. Okay, so in parasites we have two different types, ectoparasites and endoparasites. Okay, in parasites we have two types, ectoparasite and endoparasites. What are ectoparasites? It will feed on the external surface of the host. If a parasite is coming and if it is living on my external surface of the body, that is known as ectoparasite. It can happen not only on human body, it can happen on any other organism or a plant body as well. If any parasite is coming and it is living on the surface of a plant body or an animal body, that becomes an ectoparasite. Then what is endoparasite? Endo is inside, ecto is outside. Endoparasites mean the parasites which will enter our body. Just like Plasmodium will enter your body, it will stay inside your body and it will cause malaria. They are known as endoparasites. Okay, any parasite which will enter the body of the organism and cause a disease. Ecto means it will remain on the surface of the body. It feeds on the external surface of the host. Okay, examples for ectoparasites. Lice on human. Usually on the human head, they will feed on the lice is generally found in the human hair. Okay, they will remain on the head portion of the human and they will suck the blood from the human head. Okay, so they are the tiny insects that will be found in the human body, especially in the hair. Ticks on dog. Okay, if you have seen on the body of the dog, there will be small black insects which are known as ticks. Okay, they will also be present on the outer surface of the body of a organism. Marine fish, in infested with copypods. Just like this, lice will stay in human hair, and ticks will be will be present in the external surface of dog's body. Okay, there are organisms called as copypods which will remain attached to this marine fishes. Okay, these are known as copypods. Okay, these organisms are very tiny. Okay, and they will be present attached to the body of marine fishes. Just like lice stays in human hair and ticks in ticks on the surface of dogs. Ticks are also found on the body of the cattle as well. Cuscata, parasitic plant, grow on hedge plants. If you see this particular plant, they are known as cuscata. Okay, generally this particular cuscata, this yellow color, the plant, they generally grow on hedges. They are generally found on hedge plants. Hedge plants are nothing but, when you grow small shrubs in a group, where you make it as a border of your, garden. Okay, they are known as hedges. If you can just Google it, you will be able to look at the picture of hedges. Okay, small shrubs will be grown together tightly, and once in a month the shape is also maintained for that particular hedges. It is generally marked as a border of a garden or a particular area. Okay, so that is known as hedge plants. Generally this cuscata, this is a parasitic plant. Okay, this is a parasitic plant which will grow on hedge plant. This is a kind of plant which generally you have seen it growing on different plants. They will grow on grow on different plants. They directly take nutrition from the plants on which it is living. So it also acts as a parasite. So in plants also we have parasites. It lives on hedge plants. They take nutrition from those particular plants. So they are examples for ectoparasites. Now let's look into endoparasites. Endoparasites are those that live inside the host body at different sites. Okay. Now their life cycle is more complex when compared to ectoparasites. Ectoparasites, they live a simple life on the outer surface of the host, whereas endoparasites, their life cycle is little complex. Like we have studied Plasmodium, it is an endoparasite. It lives inside the human body. Its life cycle is little complex. Morphological and anatomical features are greatly simplified. Since it lives inside the body of a host, its morphological, that means its external features and anatomical features are very much simple, because they don't have to spend more energy or they don't have to put more effort to live. They just have to live inside the host body. They take nutrition from the host body. So their morphology and anatomy are little simple. Highly developed reproductive system. They enter one in number, they end up in millions in number. That is because of their high reproductive capacity. Okay. So this is about endoparasites. Okay, we will look into an important or interesting topic known as brood parasitism. Okay, brood parasitism. Brood parasitism is a type of parasitism. We cannot clearly say it is a parasitism, but it's a phenomenon where one organism seeks the help of other organism to raise its young ones or to raise its offsprings. Okay, one organism is taking the help of another organism to grow its young ones or offsprings. That is without the knowledge of the other organism. Okay, so this is known as brood parasitism. Generally what is done is, cuckoo, it's a bird, it lays its egg in the nest of a crow. Okay, when the crow lay eggs, cuckoo also lays its egg along with the eggs of the crow. crow thinks that this egg is also belonging to that particular crow. It thinks they are that particular crow's egg, and it will incubate all those eggs, and finally the eggs are hatched, and the eggs are going to hatch. Okay, and when the young ones are born, this particular crow is going to feed the young ones. Okay, this particular mechanism is known as brood parasitism. Okay, we will look into it. Special type of parasitism found in birds. Okay, generally this is a type of parasitism found in birds. If you see this is the nest of a crow, and all these 5 eggs, they belong to this crow. Okay, they belong to a crow. Whereas this egg, if you see, they are completely different. It is different in color when compared to the crow eggs. However, since it is present along with the crow eggs, the crow thinks they are my eggs, and it is going to incubate all of them. Okay. The parasitic birds lay its eggs in the nest of its host. Here, cuckoo is known as the parasitic bird, crow is known as the host. Okay, the parasitic bird, which is here we can say cuckoo, lay its eggs in the nest of its host and let the host incubate them. The egg of the host is very similar with the egg of the egg of the host is very similar with the egg of the parasite. Sorry, there is a mistake here. The egg of the host is very similar with the egg of the parasite or the parasitic bird. Cuckoo lays eggs in the nest of the crow. This is an example. Okay, I hope this is clear to you. Few birds, they seek the help of other organisms or other birds in order to grow their young ones. Okay, they lay their eggs in the nest of the crow and allow the crow to incubate them, and the young ones are hatched from the egg. Okay, and this will be fed by the crow. So cuckoo is taking the advantage, and it is actually taking the help of a crow, but it is not taking help. It is actually a kind of parasitism, where it is misusing the crow for its own benefit. Okay, so this is known as brood parasitism. This is also an important topic of your syllabus. Okay, I hope this topic known as parasitism is clear to you. Next, move on to other type of population interaction, which is commensalism. Okay, commensalism is an interaction where two species are interacting with each other. One species is positively affected. The second species is neither benefited nor harmed. Okay, there are two species. One species, you can write a positive mark, plus mark, because that species is benefited. In the other species, we can write 0 because that species is neither benefited nor harmed. There is no effect, or it is a neutral effect. Okay. This is the interaction in which one species benefits and the other species is neither benefited nor harmed. Okay. We'll look into certain example. Orchids growing as an epiphyte on a mango branch. You might have seen a mango tree where these beautiful flower bearing plants are growing above the mango tree. Okay, not only on mango tree, this particular purple color flower bearing plants are known as orchids. Okay, orchids, they produce or they form beautiful colored flowers. Okay, usually these orchids, they grow on some other tree. Okay, they, instead of growing on the soil surface, they grow on other tree. Here there is a mango tree. Attached to this mango tree's bark, an orchid is growing. If you see here, this is a mango tree. Okay, attached to the surface of the mango tree, this orchid plant is growing. Okay, this is a kind of commensalism. Why? Orchid plant is getting a platform to grow. here orchid plants are benefited. Okay, here orchid plants are benefited because they are getting a platform or a surface to grow, and they are also getting their nutrition from the mango plant. Whereas mango tree is neither benefited nor harmed. Okay, mango tree is neither, like it is not having any positive effect because orchids are growing on it, or neither it is having any negative effect because orchid plants are not going to cause any harm to this particular mango tree. It's a kind of commensalism where one species is benefited, other species is neither benefited nor harmed. Clownfish living among tentacles of sea anemone. Okay, so these organisms, if you see this off-white organism, these are known as sea anemones. Okay, and this fish is known as clownfish. Okay, they are known as clownfish, and these organisms are known as sea anemones. We have studied this under coelenterids. Okay, so these organisms are known as sea anemones, and if you see this lengthy part of the sea anemones are known as their tentacles. Okay, these clownfish, they usually live attached to the tentacles of the sea anemone. Okay, so these are the organisms known as sea anemone. Okay, and this elongated portions are known as their tentacles. Along with the tentacles of the sea anemone, these clownfish, they live. Okay, so here clownfish are getting a place to live with the association of the sea anemone, whereas sea anemone is neither harmed nor benefited from the clownfish. Okay, clownfish living among tentacles of sea anemone. Tentacles are these long portion. The whole organism is known as sea anemones. Barnacles on back of whales. Okay, we have seen what are barnacles. These are barnacles. Usually these barnacles are also, here it is attached to the rock surface. Usually these barnacles will be seen attached to the body of a whale. Okay, whales are the largest fish that you will find in the ocean. So they will be seen attached to the body surface of the whales. Okay, where barnacles are getting a place to live, whereas whales are neither benefited nor harmed because of the barnacles. Okay, next, cattle egret and grazing cattle. This is a cattle. Okay, and this is the cattle egret. Generally, they usually you have seen them, living on the body or standing or just staying on the body of the cattle. Whereas the cattle is neither benefited nor harmed by this particular egret. Whereas the egret is finding a place to, live on this particular cattle. Okay, so this is a kind of commensalism. Let's move on to the last type of interaction, which is amensalism. Okay, amensalism is an interaction where there is an interaction between two species where one organism is negatively affected, where the other species is neither benefited nor harmed. Okay, one species is harmed, other species is neither harmed nor benefited. Okay, I'll take an example of I have taken the example of this elephant. These elephants. Elephants stepping on ants or leveling brush does not benefit the elephant but causes harm. Okay, imagine an elephant is walking. It is going to destroy so many plants while they are walking. It is going to cause small animals which come under their feet, okay, which come under their leg. So these organisms which come under their feet, come under their leg, including small ants, some insects, okay, these organisms, also the plants which are destroyed by the elephants when they are walking, are negatively affected or they are harmed because of the elephant, whereas the elephant is just walking. It is neither benefited nor harmed because of the dying ants which are coming under its leg. Okay, so elephant stepping on ants. When they are stepping on ants, the ants are going to die. Leveling brush, they are going to kill so many plants, or they are going to kill the complete grass, which is coming under their step. So these grass or the ants which come under their leg are harmed, whereas the elephant is neither benefited nor harmed. This is a type of interaction which we call it as amensalism. Okay, so this is the kind of population interaction. Let's move on to the next level of next type of population interaction, which is also the last type of population interaction. It is known as mutualism. Okay, mutualism is a kind of interaction where two species are interacting with each other and both the species are benefited. Okay, interaction between two living organisms, both are equally benefited, nobody is harmed. Okay, lichens, you have seen this particular growth on the tree bark. This is known as lichens. Okay, these are known as lichens. Okay, lichens, it is a relationship between a fungi and algae. Okay, last year syllabus itself you have studied what is a lichen. Lichen is a combination of algae and fungi. When algae and fungi come together, we call it as lichens. Okay, here the fungal part, when the fungus and algae come together, we call it as lichens. The fungal part is known as mycobiont and the algae part is known as phycobiont. Okay, mycobiont, why? Myco means fungus. Phycobiont, why? Phyco means plants. Okay, so the fungus and algae, when they come together, we call it as lichens, whereas the fungus part of the lichen is known as mycobiont. Algal part of the lichen is known as phycobiont. Next is mycorrhiza. Mycorrhiza means when fungus is found in association with the root. Okay, here if you see, this yellow colored part represents the root and the white hyphae or the mycelium spreading across the root. This is the fungus. Okay, the yellow is root and the white color mycelium that we see here is the fungus. When the fungus is in association with the root, it is known as mycorrhiza. Okay, relationship between fungi and root of higher plants is known as mycorrhiza. Okay, here root is giving space for the fungus to grow, whereas fungus, they make the root very much drought tolerant, and they also provide nutrition to the they also help the root to become insect resistant, pest resistant. Okay, whereas the root gives nutrition to the fungus. Okay, here you can see lichens, both why we have taken the example of lichens under mutualism. Fungi and algae, they are living in association with each other. Fungi is helping algae, algae is helping the fungi. Okay, here also root and the fungus are together, we call it as mycorrhiza. Root is helping the fungi, fungi is helping the root. Okay, pollinating insects and flowering plants. Okay, we have studied about pollination. Okay, there are certain pollinating insects who will get the pollen grains from one plant to another plant. Okay, now a flower, a plant and the pollinating insects are in mutualism. Okay, the plant is helping the animals in pollinating insects, whereas the pollinating insects are helping the plants. How plants are helping the insects? Plants are giving nectar, okay, to the insects, whereas how the insects are helping plants? Insects are bringing pollen grains to this particular plants. So there is a mutualism between a pollinating insect and the flowering plants. Insects get nectar and fruits, whereas flower gets pollens. Okay, what do the insects get? Insects will get nectar as well as the fruits from a particular plant. Whereas what the plants will get? Plants are going to get the pollen grains. Okay, now there is a close association between mutualism between fig tree and its pollinating agent wasp. Okay, so this is a fig fruit. Okay, this is a fig actually. Now, the picture here you see the black color insect, that's a wasp. Okay, here you can see the wasp and this is a fig. Okay, fig fruit. Now if you see the wasp, which you can see here is, they make use of this fig fruit to lay their eggs. Okay, and the eggs will the wasp uses this particular place of fig fruit to lay their eggs, whereas the fig plant make use of this wasp to get the pollen grains from some other plants. So there is a close relationship or mutualism between the fig tree and this particular wasp. Okay, we can read, fig trees can be pollinated only by wasp species. The black color wasps that you can see inside the fig fruit, they are the only organism who can bring pollen grains for the fig tree. Whereas female wasp uses the fruit for laying its eggs. Okay, and also when the eggs are converted into larvae, okay, the larvae also grows in this particular fruit itself. They take the nutrition from the fig seeds. Okay, female wasp uses the fruit for laying its egg. Okay, that's known as oviposition, and also uses the developing seeds for nourishing its larvae. Okay, imagine there is a wasp, female wasp. It wants to lay its egg, so it goes in search of a fig tree. When it goes in search of a fig tree, it goes to a particular fruit and they lay their eggs inside the fruit. When the egg is converted into a larva, the eggs is modified into a larval stage. The larva takes nutrition from the surrounding seeds which are present inside that particular fruit. Okay, so this wasp is completely benefited because it is finding a place to lay its eggs and grow its young ones. Whereas how the tree is benefited, when the female wasp is coming, it is coming from pollen grains from some other fig tree. Okay, so there is a mutual understanding between the fig tree and the wasp. Okay, so let's next move on to another interesting topic known as sexual deceit. Okay, sexual deceit, it's a kind of cheating, we can say. Sexual deceit means Mediterranean orchids. Okay, we have seen the picture of orchids. These are orchids. Okay, there is a special type of orchids known as Mediterranean orchids. Okay, the name of that Mediterranean orchid is known as Ophrys. Okay, this Mediterranean orchid, which is known as Ophrys, actually carries out the sexual deceit. So what is the sexual deceit? Okay, we will see what is sexual deceit. Petal of the flower, okay, if the petal of this particular Ophrys plant flower resembles a female bee in size, color and markings. Okay, if you see the female flower of this Ophrys, there is an orchid known as Ophrys, okay, and the female flower which is formed in that particular orchid looks like this. Okay, now this flower resembles, if you look into this particular flower, you might also think or assume that it could be a female bee. It is not a flower, it looks like a female bee. Now, petal of the flower resembles a female bee in size, color and markings. If you look into their body, marking and size and the color, it looks like a female bee. Okay. Now, male bee attracted to what it perceives as a female, pseudo-copulates with the flower but does not get any benefits. However, pollens from the flower will be dusted on the male bee during this process, which will be carried to another flower. Okay. So, this is the flower of this Mediterranean orchid known as Ophrys. It looks exactly like a female bee. Thinking that it is a female bee, a male bee is attracted towards this. It comes to this female bee. It will carry out sexual intercourse with the female bee, with the flower actually, which it thinks as a female bee. Okay, it considers this female flower, as a female bee. Okay, considering this flower as a female bee, it will carry out sexual intercourse with this particular flower. Okay, however, it just had the satisfaction that it had a sexual intercourse with the bee. However, it was not a sexual intercourse, it was a sexual deceit. Okay, so deceit means it's a kind of cheating that is done. Okay, this Ophrys, which is a Mediterranean orchid, just in order to attract the male bee, it has formulated its flower just like a female bee. The male bee will come, it will pseudo-copulates. Pseudo-copulates is a term that we can use. Pseudo-copulates means, pseudo means lie. Okay, it is a false copulates. Copulates means sexual intercourse. It is a false sexual intercourse with the flower but does not get any benefits. Okay, does not get any benefits apart from carrying out the sexual intercourse, whereas the flower has got its pollen grains which the bee is carrying along with it. So this is known as sexual deceit. Okay, we will look into this again. Mediterranean orchid Ophrys employs sexual deceit. Okay, petal of the flower resembles a female bee in size, color and markings. The male bee attracted to what it perceives as a female. Okay, the male bee thinks that it is a female bee, come close to the female bee, it pseudo-copulates, that means it carries out a false sexual intercourse with the flower but does not get any benefits. However, pollens from the flower will be dusted on the male bee during this process, which will be carried to another flower. Okay, this bee, the male bee which is coming, might carry the pollen grains. If it is not carrying the pollen grains also, in the span of carrying out sexual intercourse with the flower of that particular plant, all the pollen grains which are present on that particular flower, which actually resembles a female bee, it will be attached to the body surface of the male bee. When the male bee again goes to another Ophrys, thinking that there is also another female bee. Okay, so there it dusts the pollen grains, which it is going to carry in its body surface. This is known as sexual deceit. Okay, with this we are done with all the different types of population interaction, and we are also done with the chapter. Okay, so let's recall once again what are the concepts that we have studied in this particular chapter. We started with what is ecology, what are the different levels of organization in ecology. Under that we have studied different, the ecological hierarchy, organisms and its environment, different major abiotic factors which includes temperature, water, light and soil. We studied how organisms respond to abiotic factors. Under that we have studied regulate and confirm. Okay, which are the permanent response to abiotic factors. We have also studied about alternative response, for a shorter duration. We have studied migrate, suspend and adaptation. What is the migration? What is migrate, suspend and adaptations? Under the adaptations, we have studied adaptations of animals and adaptations of plants in deserts, in cold climates, in higher altitude regions. Okay, and how desert lizards adapt themselves. We have studied about population attributes. We have studied different population attributes like birth rate, death rate, sex ratio, population density and age distribution. How to draw age pyramid, how population growth happens, and which are the different processes which helps in population growth. Okay, the population density equation, population growth model, under that exponential and logistic growth model. This is the exponential growth model. This is the logistic growth model. We have studied about life history variations, about Darwin's theory. We have studied about different population interactions like mutualism, competition, predation, parasitism, commensalism and amensalism. Okay, all these population interactions are very important because, as I already mentioned, they can ask you, they will just give you an example of certain interaction happening between two species, and they'll ask you what type of interaction is that. Okay, so it's very important. With that, we are completing this chapter, organisms and population. If you have any queries, you can get back to me. I'll WhatsApp you the notes.